craft with you. For today's craft, you're going to need some white paper, either printer paper if you have it, or even better, a roll of white butcher paper, which can be purchased online. I got this paper, it's super thick. I really like it because it's very easy to use, from Staples, and it was, I think, about $11.99. They also have it at Michael's and Joann's. Amazon is taking a little bit longer to get things to you, so the Staples came in 3 days, which was super awesome. I ordered it on Friday, came on Monday. But you can use regular white printer paper. It makes it easy to use as well. We have tape if you're going to be using printer paper. You don't need tape if you're going to be using butcher paper. Scissors, crayons, a pencil, and it might help to have a darker marker, like a Sharpie marker, but be careful if you use Sharpie marker, because Sharpie does not come off of anything. So you want to make sure that whatever you're using, it does not bleed through your paper. So be sure to do like a little test swipe, because if you linger too long with Sharpie marker, you can make a mess on the surface below. So we're going to be sending hugs to all the people that we love. This is the hug that my son Aiden made, which I can actually show you another one that we did. We're sending this one to his grandma. So what it is you're going to be laying on the ground to trace your body. So you're going to need mom's help or the help of an older brother or sister. You can see there's one hand. Aiden is 15, so he has a very long piece of paper. And then here's his other hand. And the idea of this is that if you can't get a hug from your grandkid, they can mail you one, which I love, because we're especially missing our grandparents during holiday time. So if you don't have a big roll of white paper like we have, the other thing you can do is tape together pieces of white paper. But you want to make sure that it's at least from here up on your child's body, so your body. So like you can see, my hands, they don't take a lot of space. Right? My arms are skinny, and my hands don't take a lot of space. But from here to here, that takes a lot of space. So for Aiden, he would actually need a little bit more than 2 down. He would actually need a third one put on there. But for a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old, they're probably only going to need two going up and down, and then you need more going this way. So after you figure out how many you need, you're just going to tape them together. Now, I'm just using small amounts of tape for my my body that I'll be copying or tracing. But if you think you really want to cut this out, because you have 2 choices. You can either leave it as a poster like this and send it that way, or you can cut it out so it's actually the shape of you, which is kind of cool too. If you want it to be the shape of you, then you're going to take a big long piece of tape like this, and you're going to go all the way down, because you're going to want to make sure that there's no part of the paper that's not covered. If you are just going to leave it as a big flat poster, then a couple of pieces running up the side is all that you'll need. So you want to make sure that you're taping them together lengthways, and then also, so you're going this way, and you're also taping them this way. So you have a nice long piece of paper. It can take, my little next door neighbor, it took about, I want to say 16 pieces of paper. So if you're larger, it might take even more than that, but it's worth it. It's a lot of fun. And I think that whoever you're missing and whoever's far away from you that you would send this to, they'd be really happy. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to lay on the paper like this. Okay, you can see that how I would lay on the paper across there, and then you trace around. So I'm just going to lay my hand down here, and I trace around. And when you do hands, you want to make sure that your hand is kind of out like this, so that you can distinguish. If you put your hand together like this, when you trace it, it kind of looks like a paw. But if you keep your fingers out like this, then you can see all the fingers. Paw, actual hand. So after you lay your hand down, you're just going to trace it. And then, after we finish drawing our body, we're going to be again, I would be laying on the floor and tracing my whole body. There's features of yourself that you want to distinguish. So for instance, if I'm wearing a bracelet, I could draw a bracelet. If I typically wear a ring, I could draw a ring. And the same thing with our faces. So when you get to the face part of your body, a lot of kids get really, really nervous about drawing faces because faces are kind of tough. So I'm going to give you some tips about how to draw faces. So again, I'm going to be using a Sharpie marker for this. I think you should start with pencil, but I'm going to use a Sharpie marker because it's easier to see on the recording. If you start with pencil, you can erase it later, and then you could go back with a Sharpie, or a black crayon would be, if you don't have a Sharpie, works well too. So most people's faces, if I were to pull this away from my face, are kind of oval. They're kind of ovular. Okay, so if we draw an oval on our paper, I'll start with a pencil, and then I'll copy this or trace it with my black marker. Okay, so if I were to draw an oval, it looks like this. It's the basic shape of a face. Okay, so your eyes are about, if you take the top of your head and the bottom of your chin, your eyes are approximately half of that way. So if you were to make just a little bit over half, if you were to make a line a little bit over half, right here, it's a little bit darker like that, that's where your eyes would be. Now the bottom of your nose ends about halfway between this line and the bottom of your chin. So if I were to, then I would draw another line, and that's the end of my nose. Okay? And then halfway between that line and the bottom of the chin is where your lips would be. Okay, so that's about where all of your features line up. It's not exact. Some people have larger chins, some people have larger foreheads. I like to joke that I have a 5 head because my forehead is so pronounced. So if I were to draw eyes and a nose and mouth, this is where they would line up based on those lines. So you can see here's the eye line, the nose line, and the lip line. Okay, and then we'd frame it by putting on our brows, our eyebrows. And then you can add, like, for instance, I have freckles. My son Aiden has freckles. So maybe I'll add some freckles. So there's me. Also on eyes, I'm going to get a little close for you. So if I'm to look at you, and I'll pull this back a little bit. If I were to look at you, you do not see the white of my eye, okay? Unless I'm like looking really down, then you can see the white of my eye, right? Or if I'm looking really up, then you can see the top part of my eye. So the colored part of your eye, the iris, there shouldn't be white space around it unless you were making yourself look like this. If you want to draw yourself like that, that's fine. So what I would do is, when it comes to the colored part of my eye, I'm going to first make kind of a circle like that, and there's the colored part of my eye. And then you have the pupil. That's the black part of your eye that opens up and closes depending on, to let light in. If it's super bright outside, it gets really small, and it might be in the center of your eye and super small. If it's not so bright, like I'm indoors right now, then it might not be so big, or it might be bigger because it's allowing more light in. It's like a lens of a camera. Okay, so we can do it like that, okay, which kind of looks like, whoa, I'm scared. Or typically when you're looking at someone, you don't see the top of that round part. So I would draw it more like this. So you see how this eye looks more scared and this eye looks more typical. And then if you have lashes, you can add the lashes. Just like that. Now most everyone has lashes, but sometimes you can't see them as much, so you don't need to draw lashes unless you have dark eyelashes like I do, and then you can draw them so you can see them. Or sometimes boys prefer, they feel that it looks more feminine And that's okay. You don't need to draw the lashes, but that's how an eye would look. Okay, so one other little tip when you're drawing faces. A lot of people have problems with symmetry. So no face is perfectly symmetrical. If I were to show you this part of my face versus this part of my face, they are not exactly the same. Let me pull this back again. So this side of my face looks a little bit different. This eye is more open. This part of my lip isn't as fat as this side of my lip. My nose is kind of symmetrical, but my brows, I like to call them sisters instead of twins. They don't always do exactly the same thing. Like if I get really upset, one goes up more than the other. If I'm scowling, this one comes down more than the other. And that has to do with the muscles and also where the hair grows on your face. So if you have a problem with symmetry, what you can do is take your piece of paper and fold it in half lengthwise, just like this, okay? And you're going to draw your shape. And some people have rounder shapes or more square shapes. Just draw the shape that you feel is closest to you. So I'm going to draw my oval shape, okay? So there's one half of my oval shape. And then I'm going to make that a little more black so that you can see, okay? There we go. So there's one half of my face. So now I am going to draw, I'm going to make my lines. I'm going to do halfway for my eye, half of that for my nose, and half of that for my mouth. So there's my lines for the different parts. And on the eye, I'm just going to draw my eye there. And then I'm going to make that darker with my black marker or black crayon or brown crayon or purple crayon. Any dark crayon works. And then I'm going to draw half of my nose and half of my lips. And I'm going to make my lips smiling a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit open. And then I'm going to trace over the top of that. Okay, so there's one half of my face. Okay, so now this is folded in half. If I were to put this against the window, I could trace the other side. And I'll show you by using this. You can see there's the side. You can just trace that right through. So if I were to put that up to the window, I can just trace and make this symmetrical. Because I've used a super dark thing, I think I can see it laying flat here. It won't be perfect, but it'll be pretty close. Again, the windows work best because the light is shining through. If you do it at night, it will not work because the light's not shining through. So this is a daytime. If you want to use the window, if you feel uncomfortable with how you're, and then when I open this up, then I have a kind of a symmetrical face. Now, if I do this all in pencil, then I can make the corrections because you see how I kind of made a little mistake down there. I would, if I did it in pencil, then I could erase it better and make all the lines line up. So there's my face. And the same thing with the brow. I can add my brow. So then I have a fairly symmetrical face. That's if you're worried about it. Then when you have your piece of paper that you're creating your that when you have your whole piece of paper, you can slip it underneath and do the same thing. Just trace it just trace it right over the top. I take another piece of paper. And you can kind of see, it's a little bit hard to see in this light, but you can kind of see how you can see the face shining through, right? And that way you can trace your face. It's just a little tool to help make it easier if you don't feel confident. And then again, add, what are you wearing? Color Aiden was wearing a striped shirt, and we put a heart in front of it that says, "I miss you, Grammy," because that's what he calls his grandma. But you can create your striped shirt if you wear jewelry, if you have glasses like Aiden does, or freckles, You color your hair the correct way, or if you want to make it fun, you can do purple hair. You can do it however you like. If you want to add a message, like we've said, Ramadan Mubarak, you can add a message there. But if you're going to cut it out, which you can too,